Hello, I'm Gwendolyn Birkin.
And I'm Michael Sue. Welcome to Bent TV.
And tonight on Bent-O-Rama, we will be looking at the views of queer film and television makers. These artists are helping to change the face of typical gay and lesbian stereotypes, which are portrayed on television and film throughout the world.
For many years, queer film and video festivals have provided a forum for queer film and video makers. Commercial TV is slowly, very slowly, starting to include homosexual characters. And now, with community television stations popping up all around Australia, queer TV will be more visible to the public.
Melbourne's gay and lesbian community will be coming out of the closet in a big way and playing a larger part in normal people's lives.
How often do we see gay and lesbian images portrayed in commercial television and mainstream film today? Not very often.
How can the overexposure of heterosexuality on television change so that there's a proportional representation of different sexual preferences?
Bent TV hopes to change the balance and provide an avenue to provoke thought and to help to bring about positive change. This effort should strengthen the acceptance of gays and lesbians in the community.
Queers have always made great art. You know, we've always had the best artists, the best writers, the best filmmakers too.
With kind of the aid of films that show, you know, healthy lesbian relationships and gay male relationships and stuff like that, men and women, straight men and women will, you know, probably realise that, well, there's nothing so bad about that. You know, they might even find it quite erotic and think, well, wow, I'd like to maybe experience something like that.
There's always a fascination with what's thought of being alternative lifestyles, and I think that's always part of it. You know, it's I mean, film's such a voyeuristic medium that I think people will go and see films on the most amazing things. You know, even I would go and see things that I, you know, to shock myself, I suppose, or it's a safe forum to kind of explore a whole lot of different levels of thought and understanding.
Straight society is about 10 or 20 years behind in accepting that lesbians have sex. Lesbians are out there, they're going to be in films.
We have Madeline Swain here to talk to us about queer films and video festivals. Madeline, firstly, what is your involvement with queer films and video festivals?
My involvement in Melbourne is that I'm the president of the Melbourne Queer Film and Video Festival, which is an annual festival in March. And I also do a bit of freelance writing for one of the gay newspapers, reviewing films and TV and stuff.
Madeline, why do you feel that there is a need for an exclusive gay and lesbian film festival?
It's a good question, and it's something we've been thinking about in our festival in Melbourne, particularly because we have such a gay-friendly international festival. The Melbourne International Festival in June shows a lot of gay and lesbian product and often gets the jump on us to show things that we would quite like to show, but they get hold of them first. So you sit and think, well, if they're going to show these films, what is the left for us? And basically, I think our role in Melbourne tends to be to show things that wouldn't necessarily get shown at that festival, more experimental stuff from younger filmmakers that are just starting out, TV series and programs like that. So it's maybe the more left of field stuff.
Queer films are very popular at the moment and reaching a wider audience. What do you think the southern public attraction is?
I think there's more of them, really. There's a lot being made, and I think the thing is that there's always been a lot of queer filmmakers and people working in the film industry. But for years and years and years, they had to have a certain discretion in what they were doing, and they would make sort of films that you could have subversive readings of, but they weren't actually very out there. Whereas as people become more and more sort of happy with what they're doing, then they can make films from an earlier age that are much more queer, if you like. So if those films are being made, then people go and see them.
And next we have Karen Charman to talk to us about her film Is Mary Wings Coming?
The basic story is two friends who meet up in a coffee shop and have a conversation about different things that are happening in their lives. But I also wanted it to be a bit of a play on, I guess, how lesbians are expected to think about things. And so I had all these different shots of all these women reading the same book, you know, how that kind of happens. And I wanted to sort of play around with that idea of what people are meant to kind of think, what's correct and what's not correct, and exploring those, I guess, about desire and exploring different bits of desire.
Now let's see an excerpt from Karen Charman's film, Is Mary Wings Coming?
Well, it's the one where she's quoting this Irigoro stuff about people of the same sex not being able to experience the sort of ecstasy that heterosexuals can experience. I just don't get it. That makes me feel invisible, and I know she's a lesbian, so why doesn't she take that discussion further?
Why don't you say something to her? It's just pure heterosexism. You can challenge her on it. She probably thinks so too.
Oh, then why doesn't she say that? Anyway, she's got all the power. It's her responsibility. She should be more careful and say something to refute comments like that. I would if I were her. I wish I could talk to her, but I just don't feel like I can.
It's because you're attracted to her. She's in a powerful position for you, talking about different discourses on sexuality in front of 100 people as a lesbian.
Well, you've got it all worked out. You can go and talk to her.
Won't feel as good as you do it.
You should have been there, right? You I just really get you. I've just been to this meeting, right? And there was this woman, this sort of radical feminist 70s guru, who was trying to tell me that I shouldn't use my fingers whilst I'm fucking. What do you think of that?
Oh, I don't even think I want to know why. Did you say why?
Something about reproducing a heterosexual environment. We should all be anti-penetration.
So what did you say?
Oh, it was good. I said, listen, sweetheart, no one's going to tell me what to do in bed. Oh, sorry.
That is so fucked. That's saying, right, that hex have the monopoly on desire. They say, don't let yourself be defined by men, but really what they're saying is let me define you. I can imagine what you think of my dildo. No, I'm serious.
I've just finished writing a script a little while ago, and it's going to actually be a sequel to the one that I just made.
Now we have Frances O'Connor, who's going to talk to us about her film Glass Breaks.
It's kind of like looking at a journey in someone's life, kind of from, or a time in their life where they're looking at who they are as a person, and looking at what a relationship has, you know, what kind of effect a relationship has had on their life, and how they can get past that kind of delusion that like the relationship has ended, and reach a point where they're kind of getting back to their own sense of themselves, and embracing, you know, themselves for the kind of abilities they have, or, you know, their own love of their own life, instead of trying to live through someone else's life and get their kind of fulfillment from something that's pretty much dead now. So it's basically looking at the demise of a relationship and coming to that point where you've got to let go of that relationship and move on.
You've gone. Will you return? Time can change a person's mind. In your absence, I will wear a symbol in memory of you. Until you return.
Gay films are very popular at the moment, reaching a wider audience. Gay and lesbian films, that is. What do you think the sudden public attraction is?
Well, I think it's very symptomatic of just the growing change in people's sexuality. I mean, in general, I think people are really questioning their sexuality and exploring their sexuality a lot more in society, and they're not afraid to come along and see a lesbian, like a woman isn't afraid, a straight woman or a bi woman, or, well, generally straight women in recent times, I think, are probably giving, lesbian films a go, and there's a curiosity there, I think.
We have now joining us Jeanty St. Clair to talk to us about her film Crossing Over.
Well, it actually started as I wanted to produce a series of short works which each related to a letter of the alphabet, and I thought I'd start with the letter Q because it was a good one. Of course, that brought up all manner of issues to do with queer, or what queer is. And as we began filming, it kind of turned into a very celebratory little essay on cross-dressing within the queer community, and not cross-dressing in the sort of sense that it related to transsexualism or even transvestism as necessarily a way of life, but just as I guess just one of the many facets of queer culture. There being dykes out there that love to slap on a moustache every now and then and pop the uniform on, and a whole bunch of gay boys that really get into getting dressed up as women and hopping up on stage. So in some ways it's actually about performance and ways of subverting your I guess your gender, or even just the way you present your gender as a very flamboyant, extroverted kind of activity to get into. And I worked very closely with John Phillips from Not Drowning Waving to create a soundtrack that in some ways was anthemic. You know, it had to do with being an anthem. I didn't want the work to come across as being something that was out there to educate a straight audience into cross-dressing in the gay community. That wasn't what it was about. It was more just to present a series of images that were seen in a celebrationary light. It was a celebration of a way of life, of an attitude, of a fashion sense.
We have here Loka, a queer filmmaker, who places emphasis on special effects in his movies. We take a look now at his experiences with Done to Death.
That was me trying to work out the special effects, and that was more my desire, how the special effects worked and how to create a reaction, more than the gore and the horror side of it. It was more how they worked, so it was more of a technical. Done to Death was completed 1983, about October, and released at Bent-O-Rama cinema, independent season for a few weeks, which went okay. And now we're looking at video release for Done to Death, so that'll be around August.
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Sin. Not so attractive to some, irresistible temptation to others. Whatever you desire, I possess it. But there's a price. But don't worry, you don't pay till after death. So, what is your desire?
Introducing the most sinful Miss Candy.
Oh, so pretty. I feel pretty and witty and gay. Hey, Susie, it's Candy. Oh, Candy. I feel pretty. Oh, so pretty. I feel pretty and gay. I feel pretty. Oh, so pretty. And I'm pretty. Oh, so pretty. You want to join the family?
Everybody hide in the cupboard! Shit! Ah!
Loka, can you tell us about your current work?
We're running a feature film called Jazz Sex that explores the different levels of love: heterosexual love, gay love, self-love, and spiritual love. And the film is trying to bring about a feeling that love transcends the physical. So love is non-denominational. It doesn't matter what sex you are.
Gay films are very popular at the moment and reaching a wider audience in the mainstream. What do you think the sudden public attraction is?
Initially, I think it had a lot to do with the HIV explosion, which got us a lot of media coverage and media freedom. But I think the focus is going away from that now, because everyone is living with AIDS, whether we've got it or we're positive or negative. We're all living with HIV. So we're kind of used to it on some levels. So I think the focus is more, it's broader now. It's revealing us as people, more than just a community suffering with a disease. It's over that now, I feel.
Yes.
It's exploring other aspects of our nature.
I think, AIDS has got a lot to do with the elevation, I reckon, of, gay men and lesbian sort of lives into the kind of central, into media and into newspapers and, on television. And it's a pity that it's taken something so, catastrophic, really. But I think that it has taken, a disease that kills people to mean that all of a sudden we have to have some attention, paid to us. And I think that although sometimes I think the attention is just about, I don't know, legislation's not the right word, but, you know, how are our relationships going to be sort of recognised in terms of rights, in terms of, you know, healthcare, in terms of, you know, support, and that all of those questions are being, you know, thrown up, and we can't be ignored in the same way as we were.
And finally, to finish up, we'll hear their views on what they'd like to see happening in queer films and television.
Well, I'd love to see like a gay artists funding where you could approach a panel like you would at Film Vic, and they have it for the Aboriginals, they have them for all minority groups, so we should have one as well, some funding body. They have them overseas, not in Australia.
We're catching up though.
Hopefully.
I would prefer to watch women kind of together in intimate situations and sexual situations than men and, you know, than a hetero man and woman. I think there's a, for me, I find it more erotic and more sensual to see women together, and yeah, I think that's important to capture that in films if you can, if the script is calling for that kind of, those kinds of scenes. And I think lesbian audiences really like to see it and need to see it, because there's not really that much on television or in mainstream cinema that provides that for them. So it's, yeah, I think, you know, they would be, I know many that get very disheartened and disappointed when they come out of a lesbian film where there's maybe just a kiss and that was it. You know, I mean, you get very involved in the characters, and they're playing out. I mean, the characters are almost like a reflection, or you want them to be a reflection of your own desires. You know, I think when you're in the audience, you want them to you know, carry out a kind of an act that maybe you yourself would like to be doing in that kind of situation. And especially if you haven't been involved for a while with someone, you know, I suppose seeing that sexual intimacy is a way of satisfying a gap in your own life.
I think what I'd always like to do, whether the story is solely gay themed or not, is I'd like for always there to be gay characters in anything I do who are just part of the general tapestry of life, just in many ways that the gay community is part of the general tapestry of life. I think that that's a really successful way to integrate gay characters into stories that aren't necessarily, you know, solely gay. It would be great to see a lesbian feature come out of the Australian, the mainstream Australian filmmaking community, I guess, where the lesbian characters that live happily ever after. I mean, that would be a new take, I think. It'd be also really good to see gay and lesbian characters evolve in Australian television, both drama and sitcom, where they are not brought in for an episode here and there specifically to deal with the issues of, I think that the two issues that you really only ever see are AIDS-related issues and lesbian mothers, and that's been the limit so far. Now let's see some really good queer characters on Australian television which have a lifestyle that isn't necessarily caught up with too many of these grand problems, that they just cruise through like everyone else cruises through, and they do it in their own queer way, and that's pretty cool. And that would be really good. And also it'd be great to, I guess, sort of see a lot more coverage of queer arts and cultural events within the reportage of programs like ABC's Review and SBS's Imagine, and maybe even popping up on Stan Grant's Real Life or something like that. It would be really good. I'd rather see us fitting into the fabric of society. I think that would be a really positive move, providing lots and lots of really accessible and positive role model images for people who are out there still trying to sort out their own sexuality.
We'd like to thank all the filmmakers for coming along today. It's their films, along with other queer film and video makers, who are helping to open up people's minds throughout the world to queer culture.